Final word, Mr. Gallagher.
Well, let me follow up on that. I think I would like to associate myself with the thrust of Ms. Lauria's line of questioning, which is to say, there simply is no way to do deterrence by denial, particularly in the Indo-PACOM theater, unless we find a way to get more Navy, Marine Corps tooth into the blunt and contact layers, right? But then the question becomes, to your point, Mr. Secretary, what's the right mix of tooth? What's the right mix of ships and sailors and Marines? And what's the overall cost? Because it doesn't need to be all carriers. Obviously, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and I just like to push on that. Admiral Richardson, in your design for maintaining maritime superiority 2.0, you argue that Chinese and Russian actions may imperil the, quote, diplomatic, economic, and military bonds that link the United States to its allies and partners. And if I understood your answer to my previous question, you believe that the future frigate will play a critical role in the contact and the blunt layers in preventing this from happening and in strengthening these diplomatic, economic, and military bonds. So to get to the issue, this sort of trade-off that we have to make, I appreciate the desire to control costs. I understand that the Navy can't afford a DDG light, but Secretary Spencer, can you walk me through what went into lowering the projected cost of the second FFGX from 950 to 800? In other words, what specific costs and capabilities did you remove from the program?
Didn't remove anything, Congressman. That's a great question. That's learning curve. You build something once, you know how to build it. You build it twice, you know how to build it better. 3, 4, 5, you come down the industrial learning curve. That's what you're witnessing for the 800. No capability or capacity reduction.
And then, obviously, the frigate has an aggressive detailed design and construction award timeline. And if we sort of fall behind that timeline, it's going to result in, a loss of thousands of jobs. Do you believe you're on track to execute this contract by the end of FY20?
We are, and I want to make sure that you understand when we say aggressive, it's aggressive on a historical basis. These are all proven form designs.
Sure. And Admiral Richardson, if you would comment.
It goes to what the Secretary has talked about in terms of bringing industry in early on into the requirements process. And so that's been a tremendously informative discussion, and it enhances the confidence that we're going to be moving into the frigate with more mature technology, proven hull designs, leveraging combat systems, the latest versions, and really just now it comes down to integration of that technology. And so we have good confidence. The request for proposals went out just a little bit early, and so we're stepping through this on pace.
Yeah. And again, I would like to just get back to my colleague's line of questioning. I think, again, we can have a debate about the right mix of ships, but I think in any analysis, particularly as you look at the first island chain in the priority theater, it will require more ships. Now, we could have a higher degree of autonomous ships. We can do creative things with those ships, like put LRASMs on Mark 6 patrol boats and things like that, so we have to be thinking creatively. But I think we all want to execute a plan with as much urgency and alacrity as humanly possible. And if we keep sort of changing the plan and timelines get delayed, then I think that's where a lot of us get frustrated.
So I think one of the biggest changes of the last year's 30-year shipbuilding plan to this year's is that, one, we all agree a bigger Navy is what the nation needs. That's why we're building towards 355 ships. This year's plan gets to 355 20 years earlier than last year's plan. And so I think these are changes that the nation would be in favor of to reach our goal 20 years earlier.
And I'll betray my bias in a closing comment here as a Marine and as a navalist. As I read the NDS and NSS, and I've tried to read it closely, I think it's asking the Navy and the Marine Corps to do a lot more and play a unique role. If you just look at, again, the priority theater and the shift to deterrence by denial, and I don't mean that as a knock on the Army and the Air Force and everyone we work with. They have a critical role, but I think in particular, that Navy Marine Corps team is going to be critical if we're going to actually implement the National Defense Strategy. And it's remarkable to me that we actually have a bipartisan agreement on this major conceptual shift contained within those documents, but implementing it is a whole nother story, and that's going to be a task for all of us here, and it's a budget process, it's a strategy process, and so I just hope to work with all of you as we try and simply implement the National Defense Strategy, and if nothing else, that we don't slide backwards over the next 2 years after having 2 years of success in this committee. And with that, I yield my remaining 8 seconds.
Hear, hear.